Hi everyone, it's Ryan here from Open Door Community Church, recording the sermon for Sunday, May the 17th. I have said that 5 times so far. Me and the technology are just not on the same page. So, wish me luck. I've replaced my tablet with my cell phone, just because the cell phone is a little easier to work with and is a little quicker. And also, they're not hugely different in size. The tablet has like a whole lot of bezel. So really, from a screen size standpoint, it's not a huge improvement. So I'm going to do it from my phone. This week is a follow-up to my sermon last week, where I talked a lot about how I was like my dog, which I'm sure was a really strange thing to watch for 40 minutes. I'm so sorry that was so long. Hopefully today will be a little shorter. It's a follow-up. It basically is, so you're not perfect, so what? All of us have issues and problems, things that we struggle with, from minor ones to major ones. A lot of the ones I talked about in the grand scheme of things really aren't all that bad at all, compared to the things people struggle with, every day. And really, you can always find lists of bad habits, lists of things that we struggle with. Here's one from Reader's Digest. It goes, what are some bad habits people struggle with? It goes, snacking when not hungry. That's just because food is just really good. Spending too much time sitting and watching TV. Yeah. I mean, Netflix is really bad for that too, and Amazon Prime and those, because it's so easy to binge things. You can sit for hours and burn through shows. Overspending, eating too much fast food, getting sunburned every summer. Behavior that leaves you angry, worried, or stressed frequently. Skipping breakfast, drinking too much alcohol, smoking cigarettes, and overusing painkiller sedatives. Now these are all obviously different levels of importance and severity, but they're all just bad habits that everyday people struggle with. I assume anyone watching this probably struggles with 1 or 2 things on this list, because we all have these kind of problems. But really the message last week was about the old cliche, right? The first step is admitting you have a problem. I think we've all known or met people who have a really hard time with just getting to the first step of going, you know what, I made a mistake. I have a problem. I have an issue. And I'm not talking about the super important when you're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. I mean like simple things. Like you're at work and you have a coworker who makes a mistake but won't admit that they made a mistake. They can't admit they did anything wrong. Or, I'm sure we all can think back to, junior high or high school and the group project and the person who just didn't do their section but doesn't think they did anything wrong. So the first step, and the whole message last week, was just about realizing that we all have issues, things that we struggle with, things that we have problems with, that we're no better than our pets sometimes. So the first step is admitting you have a problem. But the second step, in that Reader's Digest article, is really 10 bad habits and the most effective ways to quit them. The second step is doing something about it. So of course, if you don't admit you have a problem, if you don't admit you make mistakes, you're gonna have a bad time. People are gonna see that. They're gonna know that you're the kind of person who can't say you mess up, say that you did something wrong, saying that that you're not perfect. But a lot of these bad habits, the only really helpful thing is to do something about it. So snacking when not hungry. For anyone who knows me knows I tried to lose weight, I guess it's almost 2 years ago now. I originally wanted to lose 30 pounds and then ended up trying to losing 50 pounds. And one of the big ones is snacking when not hungry. I like to eat, and I like to think most people like to eat. So I really started controlling the things that were in the house, because it's easy to sit and just snack on food. And unusual things. I really love cereal. I can eat cereal all day, every day. Huge bowls of cereal. So I had to stop buying sugary cereal. It was just too tempting, and I just liked it too much. I tried to control what I was eating. I mean, saying that, when your doctor goes, hey, so you're like 30 pounds overweight, you should lose some weight, is not helpful if you don't do something about it. Spending too much time sitting and watching TV. When anyone asks how Jenna and I get out for walks so much, I say get a dog. You can only sit so long and not take your dog for a walk until your dog starts getting in your face. Bubbles has a couple of different methods. If we're in bed and she realizes that you're awake, she'll climb on top of you. It's very important with Bubbles that if you want to keep sleeping, you can't let her know you're up. So you can't, there's no like lying in bed and playing on your phone or the laptop. Once she knows you're up, you're up. If I'm sitting on the sofa and I'm watching a show or on my phone playing a game, she'll climb on top of me. She'll start trying to hit things out of my hand. So you can't spend too much time watching TV. Overspending has never been a huge struggle of mine. Eating too much fast food was really bad when I was working at BlackBerry. We switched to overnights, and I was getting off, I think, at 5 in the morning, and I was coming home, and I was getting a McDonald's breakfast. Is it breakfast? If I eat it after my shift, McDonald's supper, but it was breakfast. Anyway, I love McGriddles. They changed them, by the way, which makes me very sad. But I'd be getting the McGriddles and the hash browns. I was eating that every day. Just eating too much fast food. And of course, as my career path changed, I don't have that struggle anymore. But man, I was eating a lot of McDonald's at one point. I'm getting sunburned every summer. I don't like getting burnt. I'm big on sunscreen. Behaviors that leaves you angry, worried, or stressed frequently. In university, I played a lot of Battlefield 2, and I was pretty good at it. I played a medic, and I put a disconcerting amount of hours into that. As I've gotten older, and not necessarily wiser, but older, and definitely have less time to play video games, I would still try to play things like Call of Duty or Battlefields competitively against other human beings, discovering that I don't have the same amount of time that some people do, and I was not nearly as good. And at a certain point, playing online with a bunch of teenagers and kids who were honestly just significantly better than me and losing over and over and over again was not the most fun. And I spent more time yelling at the TV and getting frustrated. So I stopped. I play games single player now, I play different kinds of games. But why? If you're doing something for relaxation that makes you super frustrated and angry, you probably need to change the thing you're doing. Skipping breakfast, I'm bad for that. Drinking too much alcohol, I'm not much of a drinker or a smoker, or on sedatives and things like that. But the idea being is that you have bad habits, you have to do something about them. So, when I talked last week about how I realized that I was just like my dog, it wasn't just to say, oh well, I guess we all kind of suck. Because that's true, but really the goal is to do something about it. For anyone who knows Bubbles when we first got her, a lot of people thought that we were going to just regret our life choices. She was rangy, she was loud, she was uncontrolled. She'd been through 3 homes and she just was crazy. So this whole idea of we don't always listen, and I talked about Proverbs 19:20, listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you will be counted among the wise. But when we got Bubbles, she didn't know anything. There was no sit, there was no stay, there was no come, there was no give paw, there was no roll over, there was just Bubbles and energy. So much energy. But over time we trained her, and she actually did start to listen. She would sit, she would stay, she would come, she would actually listen to what we kind of taught her. And I talked a lot about how I use the wrong tools or I get stubborn. So it's like last night, Jenna and I were putting together an outdoor fire pit propane thing, and we're using an Allen key. And Allen keys in some circumstances are evil because they're not necessarily the easiest way to tighten screws. So I'm trying to tighten this screw with an Allen key, and thinking back to the time that I tried to remove a tree stump with a pickaxe, which, as you recall, that does not work. Pickaxes make terrible tree stump removal tools. So I went downstairs, got a screwdriver, started using that instead because I bought a whole screwdriver set because I was frustrated not having my tools. I'd learned from my mistakes. The whole idea of not always remembering. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your hearts, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. You have to recall and remember, and when it comes to Bubbles, it was buses. Bubbles, we live on a busy street, and buses would drive by. And Bubbles would lose her mind every single time. Like clockwork. Bus comes by, Bubbles loses her mind. Bus comes by, Bubble loses her mind. We keep trying to tell her, you can't bark at every bus, until eventually it just stuck. We don't have to tell her not to bark at buses. She just gets it. She just looks at the bus. She looks at the bus like she wants to, hunt it down, But at least she doesn't bark anymore. I think that's an improvement. My bad habit of not saying no, of just agreeing to everything. At a certain point that I realized that we had to set boundaries. You know, you only work so many hours a week, you only have so much time in a day. You only have so much that you can do, that you have to say no. And if all I ever did was say yes and just agree to do everything, at a certain point I just start burning myself out. And I had to remember that. We don't always know when to be quiet. Talk about Moses answers the people, do not be afraid, stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians will see you today, you will never see again, the Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. Again, talking about bubbles on the buses, needing to be quiet. But I need to learn to be quiet sometimes. Anyone who knows me in a social situation knows that I can be too much. Like, I am a loud, gregarious, outgoing person. I can dominate conversations. And I put myself in situations where I'm hosting with people or co-hosting with people, and I need to be really mindful of that. I play a fair amount of Dungeons and Dragons, and with my kind of personality, it's really easy to just take over social encounters. You know, if we're supposed to be talking in a game, in a situation, I have to really try to not talk and to be quiet. I have to let other things happen, other people talk. If I'm co-hosting with people, I have to perpetually remind myself not to just dominate the conversation, to dominate the presentation. I have to know when to be quiet. I have to be aware of that. Aware that I can be overbearing, that I can be too much. Sometimes we get too excited. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. We talked about Bubbles and us coming home and how her default situation was to pee because she was excited. It took time for her to improve. And she hasn't had an accident in the house in months that I can think of. But she did learn. She did learn to calm down, which for a Jack Russell Beagle is not easy. But she's learned to calm down, to not get too excited. And I've been trying to learn the same things. I can get so worked up sometimes, so excited and frustrated. You're working on a technical problem and I don't want to let it go. Or I'm trying to build something and I don't want to let it go. I'm trying to clean, I don't want to let it go. I have a very hard time stopping something once I start it. I get too involved, too worked up. It's not good. It can't be good for my blood pressure, I don't think. And oftentimes, taking a break is a good thing. It's really easy to lose perspective if all you do is run at something. If you don't take the time to look at it, and I was really bad for that at work, where it'd be like, no, I'm working on this problem, I need to fix it. And the next thing you know, you're an hour past and you're supposed to get off, and you still haven't figured it out. And you're just getting more frustrated and more frustrated. You're not getting any better. I'm getting too excited, too worked up. And I've really gotten into the habit of going, you know what? I'm going to walk away from this. I'm going to walk away from this. I'm going to go home. And I'm just going to think about something else. And a lot of times you come at it with fresh eyes in the next morning. And you figure it out in 15 minutes. That hour you spent trying to beat it with a stick didn't accomplish anything. You just needed fresh eyes. You just need a break. I've even had the cliche like in the shower and you're like, oh, I wonder if the issue in my code is this. Sometimes we get too emotional. Because for I am the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you. But getting too emotional is again Bubbles. Bubbles got so emotional, she got so worked up, she got so excited. And then when she thought that she'd done something wrong or that we had upset, then she'd pee and she'd roll over in it. That's not helpful. At no point in my life have I ever thought if I peed and then rolled in it, would that solve a problem? But for Bubbles, that was a reaction. She was getting too emotional. And thankfully she stopped doing that, because that was the worst. But eventually she calmed down. Getting too emotional reminds me of a couple of winters ago, when November hit and I was miserable. And I don't like to, I think it's this weird kind of modern society thing where we diagnose ourselves with things that we don't necessarily have. So I have here Ryan and seasonal affective disorder, and I have been diagnosed with nothing. So I do not want anyone to think that I legitimately have this. All I know is that when the days get short, I get squirrely. And by squirrely, I mean super cranky and kind of depressed and lethargic. And I was just led by my emotions. I was snippy, I was irrational. Jen and I would get in these arguments, and I'd end up going for walks for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, because I was just so worked up. I was too emotional. And what happens if you don't improve from that? It can't be good for your relationship. Like, I can clarify, it's clearly not good for your relationship if you're arguing and fighting all the time. And I had to realize that when that time of year rolls around, I'm not really upset with Jenna or the dog or all these other things. I'm just frustrated. My body is just, however it's reacting, I'm just miserable. And I had to find ways to combat. I had to do something about it. I needed to make sure that to come home, you take the dog for a walk, you come home, you watch a show, you come home, you play a game. I had to build structure. For some reason, as the days get shorter, I need to really start planning out what I'm doing. Because if I don't, I just start wallowing in the darkness. Which sounds like, I don't know, like teen angst, except I'm way too old for that at this point. But I had to learn, I had to adapt. Talking about how we can't walk in a straight path. I said, let your eyes look straight ahead, fix your gaze directly before you, give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left, keep your foot from evil. The last two are tricky ones. They're more abstract. The idea of having to remember makes sense. The ideas of getting too emotional make sense. They seem very intuitive. But trying to think about large life direction type things is definitely more complicated and more stressful. And at least I have definitely not solved these problems. Really, none of the problems I've talked about have I solved completely. I still slip up and make mistakes. I know I have problems and I try to improve them. But when it comes to Bubbles, I don't know if Bubbles will ever be able to go to Point Pleasant Park. It's too big, there's too many distractions, there's too many squirrels, in too big an area, and I don't know if she'll ever be able to really stick with me there. I can take her to an off-leash dog park that's relatively small and she's pretty good. She'll keep an eye out for me, you can play hide and seek, but there's too many distractions, she doesn't improve. And for me, trying to make life-changing decisions is hard. And I think the reason why is it's those times where it can be hard to do the cliche thing where Christians talk about let go and let God, which really just means at a certain point you have to admit that you may not really know what you're supposed to do. You're not going to know 100% what your actions are supposed to be. And you have to rely on God for that. You have to turn to prayer and just faith that God is going to carry you through and lead you through. And I still struggle with that. And anytime big life decisions come up, that's always going to be your problem. But at least I'm aware of it, and I try to adapt as best I can. But I don't know, if something comes up in life and I end up in Point Pleasant Park, there's going to be a lot of squirrels, and I'm going to have a hard time with it. And we pull instead of being led. By myself I can do nothing, I judge only as I hear, and my judgment is just, for I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. And then there's the times that we don't really want guidance. And that can be guidance from God, that can be guidance from friends, from family, from your spouse, from your significant others. Sometimes we try to just do everything on our own. We try to lead ourselves. Bubbles on a leash near squirrels is a disaster. And I've been working on it for years. And it's tough because her instinct is to run towards squirrels. That is what she has been bred to do. There are generations of dog in her that says, that is a tiny rodent, you must get it. I don't know what her plan is. I'm not sure what she would do when she does get it. Reminds me of like the Joker quote where he's like a dog chasing after a car and he just wants to catch the wheel, but he doesn't know what he would do with it. I don't know what Bubbles would do if she caught a mouse or a squirrel or something, but man, she needs to get it. She won't take my lead. And that's a struggle I feel like we all have. That there are certain things that we have a hard time taking input from others. We have a hard time, we think that we know what's best. We think we know what we're supposed to do. And It can be hard to go, well, no, I should take advice from somebody else. Maybe they do have perspective that I need. And the idea of going, well, maybe God has a direction for me that I'm supposed to follow, that I'm supposed to be doing, can be even more tough. It's not always easy to turn to prayer because it's not always a tangible thing. It's what we're supposed to do as Christians, but it's not always an intuitive reaction. When you can feel and you're all emotional and you're all frustrated, you want to be able to handle it and go deal with it yourself. But it can be hard to just take a breath and turn to God. And this whole thing is just a reframing of what I talked about last week. That the first step is realizing that we're not perfect, but the second step is just doing something about it. That really our goal is to just perpetually be striving to improve. 1 Corinthians 9. This is a Bible verse a lot of people have probably heard before, or it's an allegory you've heard before. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it not to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. No one runs a marathon their first time out. And we all know that. We all know that in order to succeed at something, it requires hard work. If I wanted to learn to speak French, I'm going to have to practice speaking French. If I want to run a marathon, I'm going to start with a light jog around the block. Or a light jog for 30 seconds, followed by me trying to breathe. That eventually becomes being able to jog for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, until you can jog around the block. All of these things require perpetually training, perpetually trying to improve, trying to succeed. And we don't expect to fail. It's weird to say it that way. When you're trying to improve, you don't plan on giving up. You don't go, I know this isn't going to work. And I think that's what's a struggle that a lot of us have. We go, I want to stop smoking. I want to start exercising. I want to lose weight. I want to stop smoking. I want to make better life choices. I want to spend more time in nature. I want to learn all these things. If you go into them expecting to fail, you're not going to succeed. And when you look here in 1 Corinthians talking about how we're trying this to win, and we don't do it do not fight like a boxer beating the air. So I really try. I don't just go through the motions. I don't just feign interest. I don't feign that I'm trying. That I'm really going to commit to winning. I'm going to commit to improving. I'm going to strike a blow to my body and make it my slave that I have preached to others. I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. I am going to push myself. I'm going to push myself to succeed. I'm going to push myself to improve. That I am going to get better. And really, when you take last week's message and this week's message, that's really all it's about. It's just about striving to improve, striving to get better, realizing that we're faulty, flawed human beings and that we want to be better than that. So take some time and think about the areas in your life that you do struggle with. They could be a whole list of things. Maybe it is that you spend too much time watching TV. Maybe you've got hobbies that make you frustrated instead of relaxed. Maybe you have a bad temper. Maybe you're forgetful. Maybe you start projects and you don't finish them. I feel like we all struggle with that. But take some time and to reflect on what your struggles are and what they have been. Look back at your life and think about the things that you have succeeded in. Because a part of getting that mindset of doing it to win, to have that mindset of that I'm not going to fail, that I'm going to keep going till I succeed, is looking back at your life, at the things that you have succeeded in. No one gets to adulthood having failed at everything. We've all improved. We've all gotten through things. We've all had classes that we've struggled with. My dog just hit the camera. I wonder if you can still see me. We all have things that we struggle with. We all have things that we have problems with. But we've all succeeded. We've all had the calculus exam that we barely got through. We all have, the game we played against my friends that you've gotten better at. We all get better. We've all improved. We've all overcome things. And sometimes just remembering that helps us have the energy and the perseverance to improve elsewhere. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day, Father, and we thank you for all the things that you've blessed us with, Lord. I just pray, Father, that you help us to have the strength to persevere, have the wisdom to identify the issues that we have in our lives, Lord, and to seek your will and your guidance and your strength and the support of others to improve, Father, so that we can win this race, Lord, that as Christians that we improve and that we just improve as human beings in all the things that we struggle with. Just help us to honor and glorify your will throughout this week, Lord. Just help us to run the race for you. In your name, amen. In the end, it's simple. It sounds simple. We have to identify the problems we have in our life, and then we have to strive to improve them. And it's a journey that will never end. As long as we're on this earth, we're going to have to perpetually be trying to improve. We're going to have things in our lives that we struggle with, that we want to improve and get better with. And it's our responsibility to work towards that, to try to improve, to try to get better. Well, that's it for this message here. I'm going to do the same thing I did last week. If you liked this video, please click like. If you subscribed, if you really liked it, subscribe. And otherwise, tell all your friends that nobody's perfect, but the goal isn't being perfect. The goal is to just keep trying to improve.